it's your girl, Camille B, the HR counselor. I am super duper excited to introduce to you all my friend, Shaneka Jones. She's the Director of Human Resources for UCC Holdings and a dear friend of mine. Welcome, Shaneka.
Hi, Camille. Always wonderful to connect with
I
you.
know. I'm
Awesome.
so happy to see your face, girl. I'm so happy. It's been forever. It's been forever.
It has too
I
long.
know. I know. Too long. Let me tell y'all real quick before I go into my little interview with Shaneka, but I started out in the recruiting and staffing industry. And back in 2011, keep me honest here, Shaneka, but I want to say it was
It's
2011,
about right.
I worked with Shaneka at the company that she is still working for, UCC Holdings. And I came in as a recruiter. And I always remember, and I'm so grateful to Shaneka because that was one of my first positions in HR outside of working in that recruiting and staffing space. And I remember Shaneka and I having multiple conversations. I was like telling her all of my aspirations. And Shaneka, I just want to thank you for always believing in me and saying, Camille, this is where you're supposed to be. You are supposed to be in organizations, working in HR. You know what you're doing. Do not doubt yourself. And I'm, here 10, almost 11 years later, I'm doing
Yep.
exactly what you told me I could do. So thank you, Shaneka. Thank
You
you.
are welcome. You are welcome. I tell you what, it was plenty of time we were talking, and I'm saying, let me get up out of my seat. You sit here. Because you already, you had the skills and capabilities. I just think that sometimes, just like we do for each other now, we have to have someone give us that push and say, hold on, wait a minute. You have a lot more potential than you're exercising. And I'm just so happy to see the arena that you're in now, and you are just
Thank
really doing
you.
it. And I'm just so proud of you, too.
Thank you so much, Shaneka. And now, Shaneka, like I mentioned, she is the director of human resources for UCC Holdings. So, there's nobody above that director role. She's it. She's it. So I'm so proud of you because I know how hard you work and all of your
Mm.
capabilities and your skill sets. So I'm super duper proud of you. So let me take it back. So how long have you been in the HR profession, Shaneka?
Oh gosh, well, probably for 15 plus years, I know, because it's so interesting. You start out at the foundation, that payroll, right? And I've been with union since 2007, but prior to that, I still worked in payroll, HR type capacity. So probably 15 plus years.
Yeah, it's been a
Um,
while.
yeah, absolutely. At varying degrees, which I think makes you better anyway. You got to do different things.
I love it. And I find it odd that you say that just now because I had a conversation with someone earlier today, and that was what we were saying that some people have well-rounded HR careers, right? And then there are some who specialize in one specific thing. So with you, I know you started out in payroll, but then you were also the human resources
Mhm.
safety manager. So tell me a little bit about the different facets or the box of knowledge, HR is okay, that you've touched? What different aspects of HR have you touched?
I think the better question might be, what haven't I done? Because honestly, and that's the thing about working for a mid-sized company like Union Corrugating. I started as a payroll specialist, like I said. I actually took a step back from my prior role because it was a company that I wanted to work for and wanted to get back to Fayetteville. So started as a payroll specialist and then was promoted 2 years later to the HR and safety manager. That role really afforded me the opportunity to learn more about DOT processes and procedures in the manufacturing industry, workers' comp coordination, things of that nature, And then it really put me into my passion, which was training and development. I love training and development, right? And so it was just so interesting working in that role. Got my master's while I was in the role, got my certification. And then, I worked for a wonderful boss. We both remember Buck, right?
Yes, yes.
And worked for a wonderful boss who wasn't going anywhere anytime soon because he was still good at the job. And so I decided to leave the company for about 2.5 years. And then something very interesting happened. He was getting ready to retire and he reached out and said, hey, you ought to apply. And I will tell you, when I left Union, It was certainly for my development because I took another HR manager role with a different manufacturing company. But I will also say I jumped at the opportunity to come back because it really is a wonderful organization. And it gave me the opportunity to really grow in my role even more. And so now, anything HR, safety related, I oversee. I administer our retirement plan, our benefits, employee benefits plan, all of our safety processes and procedures, worked with 2 acquisitions in 4 years, if you can believe it. So, I think, again, the better question might be, what haven't I touched?
Really, really. Because what I find so odd too is I love the fact that you were with Union because I was with Union too. They were awesome organization. But I love the fact that Buck reached out to you and was like, hey, Shaneka, you need to apply to this. Because that lets me know that he valued you just as much as I did, and I do. So I love that he reached out to you. I absolutely love that.
I tell you, I think it really speaks to, and this is what I would tell other people, you do good work for a company, you do your best work, you leave the right way. And then they don't forget you. You give them an excellent work product and you leave the right way. I think too many times we get upset and we just stomp out. Even if you are ready to go, leave the right way. And I think that really makes a difference. And I was very fortunate. I was working at a job that I loved at the time, but I said, I'm sorry, y'all, I have got to go back because it was just too great an opportunity to pass up.
Right. And you had already had such a long career with union corrugating as well. And that was the thing when I remember I reached out and you were like, I'm leaving. I was like, what?
Yeah.
What will they do without you? So I'm so happy to see that you went back home, so to speak, because you were, that's like such a family atmosphere because it is a mid-sized organization.
Absolutely.
I love it. Love it. So with your role, what is it like to be a woman of color, specifically a Black woman in this profession?
You know what, Camille, that is such an interesting question because I thought about it. I can't say when I went back to Union because just it's not the company itself, but just the structure working in the manufacturing industry. There's typically a certain type of individual that you're going to see in there. And so when I went back to Union Corrugating, I was somewhat nervous, not having worked for our CEO, Keith Medic, who, like I said, he's the CEO of our company. I do report directly to him. And, knowing the structure of the company. But I will tell you from the first interview with Keith, he's like, his emphasis was all about the role and can you do the job? And, what do you bring to us? And then I will be honest with you, too. There were a few things coming back to Union that I was not very well versed in. And I have to say that they really afforded me the opportunity to really learn and grow in the role and with the company, saying, hey, you know what? We know that you may need a little work here, but your skills and capabilities that you have far outweigh the learning curve. So I tell you what, it was just so interesting, getting back in and into the role that I'm in now. Now, I will say, I've gotten questions like, does it feel weird for you? Because a lot of times I am the only person of color and most of the time, the only woman in the room. And I've gotten those types of questions from people that I really trust and respect within the organization. But one of the things I have to say, since I've been back at Union, I never noticed. You don't notice. We go out to dinner and I'm the only girl and most of the time the only person of color, but you don't. The environment, the people that I work with, Camille, the executive leadership that I work with are just so great in that respect that I have never felt like an enigma, like, oh gosh, are they watching everything I do? Because that is just not the culture of that organization. So it's funny. I anticipated that it would be different. I have to tell the truth, but I can't say there's been one day in the meeting where I felt like I was being ostracized or looked at differently as a person of color.
I love that. I love to hear that because sometimes it is difficult. And there are going to be times I've been at organizations where I was the only one and I didn't think about it because of the way I was treated. And then there were organizations I worked with where I was the only one and I could feel it. And so when you don't
Camille,
feel that way, you feel like you've been invited, They ask you to come and take a seat at the table, and they want you to actually come and sit down and then tell them what you think. So I love
Right.
that for you. I love it.
Yeah. I will say, Camille, on the other side of it, and I'm sure I have friends that they're not that fortunate, that
Right.
they're under a microscope, and everything is like, oh, you got to be so much better, do so much more. And so I'm really, really fortunate, because I don't think I could work in an environment like that. I don't think I
No.
could, and I definitely wouldn't thrive in that type of environment.
No, and I love the fact too that UCC has awarded you the opportunity to, okay, we understand that maybe you only have 75 or 80% of what the requirements are, but we have enough
85.
faith in you. Let's go with 90. How about that, friend? How about that, right? Let's say you have 90% of the skills that they need. And
Right.
they're like, you know what? We're willing, we have enough faith in you that we know you'll get the other 10. And so for me, I think that is a big plus on the employer side, but also
Mm-hmm.
on your side for still saying, you know what? I'm going to go for this. I think a lot of time women and even women of color, sometimes we look at a job
Mm-hmm.
description and we say, oh, well, I only have 65. I only have 80. We think we have to have 110%, meaning more
Yes,
than what the job description asks for.
absolutely.
And our counterparts don't always do that. I know for a fact, I have so many male friends in HR, and they're like, I don't do that. I just apply. I'm like, what do you mean you just apply?
That's that confidence. They don't,
That's that
because
confidence.
I tell you what, Camille, and this is something that I have had to learn in both my personal and professional relationships. I go into any interview, into any conversation with the mindset, you would be lucky to have me. You would be lucky to have me, because you know what? I know what I bring to the table. I know what my work ethic is. I know that I am a person of integrity, and that I'm going to do the right thing. And so if you don't see that, I don't want to work for you anyway.
That's right. It's not a good fit. It's like a marriage, right?
Right.
And that's the one thing. And
Absolutely.
because I know you and I know your work ethic, any organization that was to have you on their team would be very fortunate. And so I'm glad that, you look at things the way you should, that you are an asset
Mm.
and that you're the best thing that could ever happen to the organization. That's right.
Right. And absolutely. And Camille, women, we struggle with that, right?
Yes, we
We
do.
that insecurity, and am I good enough? And you kind of touched on that too. Well, wait a minute, I don't have that skill. But look at all the ones you do have. That's
Right.
what I would challenge. Look at what you do have, and then too, you're a go getter, because I know you're a go getter. So I'm just okay. Well, I don't know how to do this, and this. Well, I'm getting ready to be on YouTube. I'm getting ready to take some classes. I'm getting ready to do this, and I will get there.
Yes,
And I
yes.
know that's how you are. And I'm the same way. I know that's how you are. You're going to be the knowledgeable person in the room. You're going to know.
Yes, I love to know. But you know what? I think sometimes too, even with myself, I notice, sometimes you get a no. It's not that it's no to you. Maybe they just felt like another individual was a better fit. But I found even for myself that my kind of confidence really kind of took a hit. And I was feeling like I was
Mm,
starting to question myself, like, is this what I should be doing? But then, I would reach out and have a conversation with you. Another of my what I call my HR tribe, when really I'm really worried about something, I start shooting emails and messages, and you all have always built me up. And I can really say specifically you, Shaneka, where I've been like, I don't know about this. And you're like, girl, you go get it. Yes, you can do it.
exactly.
And I'm
Exactly.
like, it's so important that you have a tribe and people that believe in you, because there are going
Hmm.
to be moments in all of our lives where we question,
Oh
like,
yeah.
am I good enough, or can I really do this? But again, I have to say, I am so impressed with UCC, because so many organizations, they, especially when I think they hire women, they want us to have
Hmm.
everything. But then, some of our male counterparts, expectations are a little different. So I love the fact that they said, you know what? So I do realize you don't have this, but I'm certain that you'll get up to speed in
Hmm.
a reasonable amount of time. And then, of course, knowing you, and now it's going on what, year 4 that you've returned back to UCC. So
4
you
years.
did, look at that. You're doing something right for sure. And I love that, because it lets you know that they bet on you, so to speak. And
Hmm.
they did right. They did the right thing by taking that chance, because you have a great work ethic. And so that means so much to organizations. Now, because of the size of your organization, Do you have any DEI efforts or, do you do a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion training? Because I remember that you love training. So is that something that you do a lot of in your org?
So not personally anymore, but I will tell you, and I tell people this all the time, if I could do something all day, every day, it would be training. I love training, especially leadership training, especially skills and development training, because I think it's so critical to the long-term health and growth of your organization. It's very interesting that you asked me this question because I am in the process right now of working with a company to develop a learning management system or some sort of internal intranet where employees can easily access certain trainings. And then now in the world of Zoom, right? We talked about doing some leadership training, and over the next 12 months or so, the VP of operations and I have coordinated to where we've said, okay, well, in this month, this is what we're going to train our leaders on. This month, this is what our train our leaders on, and so on and so forth. And then what happens is when you have better prepared leaders, you have a better prepared workforce. A lot of times they make these mistakes and these errors because they just don't know. They're afraid to ask. So let's be proactive and give you the tools, make sure you have them, and then we equip you. Now we can hold you accountable. So I could talk about training all day, Camille. Don't get me started.
Yeah, because I know. And you and I have always been passionate about that, like with training and making sure that if I want to hold the employees accountable, if I want to hold the leaders accountable, we as HR do our part, right? Make sure that we gave them all
Absolutely.
the tools they need to be successful. I was speaking to someone, and one of the things they said was sometimes organizations may not develop you the way you need to, but you as an individual, as a leader, we need your buy-in to develop yourself too. Like
Yeah.
just like you would buy the nicest handbag, the nicest pair of shoes, the nicest pair of sneakers that
Yes.
came out. Why are we sometimes not willing to invest in ourselves, so that we can
Yes.
continue to develop? I think that's so important. Now, when it comes to HR professionals, do you think, do you see that we're moving forward, or do you think with all of the diversity, equity, and inclusion conversations that we've been having,
Whew.
have you seen a real advancement? Because I had a conversation with someone today, and I feel like we were talking about this in 2001 when I first started in HR, and it seems like it's the same conversation. What are your thoughts?
I gotta agree, honestly, because you know what, Camille, that is such an excellent point. I'm telling you, I think that we've been having the same conversation for a number of years, and we as HR leaders, right? We need to start nicely kind of pushing. Let's stop talking and start doing. So if we're going to talk about more diversity inclusion initiatives, what are they? Let's talk about it. Let's define it. Let's put it in. Let's put it on paper, and let's move forward. Don't just put a blurb in your handbook and say, hey, we're equal opportunity and what are we about? And let's move forward the conversation. It's so hard because when you have just a few that's doing that, it's really, really hard. But I think it's also critical to have people like you and myself in these organizations to kind of help move that conversation along. And I will say I am seeing more of that.
Yes, I will say that. I will say that I am seeing more conversations. It has been, I would say, maybe in the past, I would say it's been happening for a couple of years, but I really saw the uptick the last year, 2020. I think there was a shift, and there was so much, with the rise of social media, where you can have
Mm-hmm.
like, the phones are following people everywhere, you're like, I mean, if I touch my nose, somebody gonna give you a so
Okay.
now we all have to be really cognizant of the things that we're doing. And
Oh
I
my gosh.
think because of that, that's why we're seeing these conversations. And I think we need to continue that. I just want to make sure that the conversations that we're having are not to check the box conversations, but
Absolutely.
it's not the fake diversity initiative, but it's real. And even if you don't know where to start, I challenge myself, you, and all of our HR professionals out there to be okay with not having all the answers, but being willing to get with our leaders to have those conversations and say, look, you're about to get uncomfortable, but this is a safe space. And we are in this together, right? Because I think that's kind of what it is too.
You know what? And that's so interesting, Camille, because I don't know what it is. And we talked about this. People, in the office, they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, I want to ask you this. And it'll be a question that sometimes I'm surprised that they would ask a woman of color, but I'm glad that they felt comfortable enough to ask me. And I'm relatively thick-skinned, so I actually enjoy having those types of conversations. Hey, well, what is this? We talk with the political climate and the way things are changing, and they talk about, defining privilege and defining things of that nature. Well, there are people within my organization who, Camille, are truly interested in understanding it and understanding what my perspective is, because I think we are really all a sum of our experiences, right? You can't blame people for what they don't know. But I think to your point, we don't know everything, but let's have the conversation in a safe space. I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that. This is a safe space. and move the conversation forward. Stop talking and start doing.
Right. Because I think one of the things too is when we have the conversation surrounding, diversity, equity, and inclusion, people get really uncomfortable. And sometimes it's more so people that may not look like us, that they start, getting really uncomfortable because they feel like we're going to be mad with them. And I try to explain when, people say, well, Camille, why is it like this? And I say, okay, that would be like me having an issue with an entire group of people. My mind doesn't work that way. If I have a problem with you, I just got a problem with you because you stepped on my toe. You did something to me, right?
That's it.
I have a problem with you. But I cannot, the sins of the father should not be the sins of the son, unless the son committed the same sin, right?
There you go.
We got to have a different conversation. But I think I always let people know this conversation may get uncomfortable. And it may even be a little uncomfortable for me too, because when you hear what some people think, you look in your mind, you're like, but that's their experience. So I'm learning, the more I mature in my career, the more I mature and get more silvers in my hair, I'm learning to have to respect other people's experience. And everyone's experience is not mine. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. That's okay. Because then we can know where can we start, right? So, okay, this is your experience. This is my experience. Let's meet in the middle. Let's have the conversation. Let me explain to you why you can't say X, Y, Z. Number one, because I don't want to see you on the news. That's why you can't say that, friend, And this is why this may be offensive to a certain group of people, or this is why people may behave a certain way.
You know what? And Camille, those conversations, we really, if we just sit down and talk, we find out we really have the same goals. We have the same objectives. We may be just voicing it in a different way, but we really have the same goals.
Definitely. And that's what you want to do, right? I think they always say you want to find that common ground. That's what it's about, right? When you find the common ground, north, south, east, west, as long as you find common ground, we'll all come together. Like, what is our end goal? We want to work in an organization where we all feel proud of the organization we work for. We all feel like we belong here and we feel included, right? So I had a friend who said, don't use the word diversity too much, because diversity, at the end of the day, we can't change who we are. Like, this is how we look.
That's right.
So what you see is what you get.
Right.
But the equity and the inclusion piece is what she said.
Yes.
Shout out to Kiana. Kiana said it was the equity and the inclusion piece. And I was like, you know what? She's right. What's the equity piece? Like, are we making sure that we're paying people the right way? And then the inclusion piece. Does everyone feel included? Does everyone feel like they're part of the family?
Everyone. And I will say that is such a great perspective, because I will say that as people of color, sometimes we forget the rest of our brothers and sisters too. I mean, and the equity inclusion piece is so important. And I tell people all the time, hiring and recruiting and hiring, training a diverse organization is certainly a goal of mine. But at the end of the day, I want the best people, and that I don't care I want the best
Best.
people for the role because that makes my job easier. I won't have to be doing this again in 6 months.
Right, right. And you know what, too? I'm glad you said that because sometimes I think, especially back in the day when the affirmative action plan really got started,
Oh yeah,
it was almost like some people were being moved to one side because they had to meet this quota, right? And so
right.
that's where a lot of the resentment came from. People don't realize that, but if you think about it, that's where a lot of the resentment came from because they felt like
Yes.
some individuals felt like, but I am a good fit, but because you have to meet this number, I can't get this job. Now, granted, on the flip side,
Okay.
some people,
It
that's what
helps.
I'm saying. There's two sides to the story because on the flip side, some people were not being given an opportunity because of
Right.
the color of their skin, or you couldn't
Yes.
pronounce their name, or you didn't know where they came
Oh,
from, or
trust
this,
me.
that, and the
Oh
third.
yeah.
So that's where a lot of this resentment sometimes comes from. And that's why it's so good that we
Hmm.
can now have this conversation. What advice would you give someone entering the human resource profession?
Well, first of all, you had better know what you're getting into. And because I tell people, people say, oh gosh, I'd love to be in HR. It is not for everybody.
Ain't for the weak.
It is not for everybody. I think that getting into HR, you want to make sure that you're an individual who can be objective, who is fair and balanced, and who also understands that it doesn't matter what level you get to within the field. We have a very a large amount of tactical work that we have done and will continue to do. There now, strategy is certainly a big part of the role, but you had better be able to put in the work, be well-rounded. Don't just put yourself in a box. Like we were talking about those boxes. Don't put yourself in a box. Be well-rounded. Be open to listen. We talked about that too. Be a person who can just see both sides. I am by nature a very black and white, but in HR, you have to be able to look at things, especially when you're developing policy, because yeah, this might be the rule, but let's look at the circumstances. So I think that we have to be open-minded without setting a bunch of precedents, right?
Right.
So so I think those are the main things. You have got to be relatively even. You have to be a rule follower because that's the crux of what we do, right? And you have to be comfortable making others uncomfortable. And the main thing, Camille, you cannot have a desire to be liked because in general, I tell people all the time, it's nice to be liked, but you don't have to like me. A person that has the need to be liked will not often make fair and balanced decisions. So I tell people that all the time because you don't want to step on toes, right? I think that's my major thing that I learned early on. You can't have a need to be liked because everybody is not going to like you.
That's right.
So yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And so, definitely, I would definitely advise that for up and coming professionals. Now, do you think that it's a smart decision for these up and coming professionals to get their certification? Because that's one of the conversations I hear a lot. Have you had, you're the HR tribe, how they are,
Hmm.
50% is like, you don't need no certification. And the other 50 is like, go get it, get it, get it. What do you think, Shanique?
If you are new in the field, so it's different with you and I who have come up and had the body of work, right? But when you're trying to get into the HR field, that to me, I'll be very honest with you as an employer, the certification is better than the degree. And the reason that I say that is because having gone through the process and actually getting ready to go through the process again, okay, that certification process that test really does test your body of knowledge, and it's not in the traditional, straightforward, multiple choice type sense. These scenarios are real life scenarios. So for me, as an employer, if I were interviewing someone for an HR manager position, the certification would certainly be, strongly preferred.
I love it. Yeah, I'm a proponent of it. I took forever, but I am studying for my
You
SBHI.
did, but you got it.
I'm like, do what we need to do. I just think it's a great idea to do that. But you always hear the debate, like, yes, no, I don't think it's smart. I'm like, I think it's smart, especially with the way the world is now. So much is
Right.
you're learning so much, and everything is changing so quickly. That will keep you abreast of all the new changes too.
And I will tell you, because I've had this conversation with people too, if you are unwilling to take this step, you are demonstrating you're not committed to the field. So you may want to rethink your decision. Getting that certification certainly shows commitment to the field. This is what I want to do. This is something that I am committed to so much that I want to make sure that I'm giving companies the proper leadership, advice, and things of that nature. So I'm so committed that this is what I'm going to do. The failure to do so, in my eyes, shows you're not really committed to the field. And so we might want to think about it.
Right. So this is my second to last question for you.
Okay.
What is it about our field that helps you stay in it this long? What is it about HR that keeps you here?
That's easy. The people. I love people, Camille. Like, I love people because oh my gosh, our employees, I have the absolute best employees anybody could ever have. And that dynamic, well, not just people, but the right people enrolled, make all the difference in your organization. And so for me, I get such a thrill about placing an employee in the role that was suited for them, and to see them excel. Like, I love that. So it is very easy for me to say what the people that I get to work with every day and interact with at all levels, from the top all the way down to that machine operator, they enrich my life so much. I so enjoy that interaction, and to be able to do something to pour into them. And then they pour into me as well.
Yes. And I have to say she's telling the truth, because when I worked there, everybody knew Shaneka, everybody loved Shaneka, but they knew Shaneka would check you if she had to. If you're wrong, she'll let you know. But they appreciated your honesty too. And it was the delivery. I always tell people it's about the delivery, and you were awesome at giving feedback, but still leaving people their dignity. So I'm so happy to see that you have not changed, Shaneka. Yes. And so where can individuals connect with you online? If they're looking for Shaneka Jones, how can they get in contact with you?
Well, the best way is through LinkedIn. I do have a profile, Shaneka Whittick Jones, on LinkedIn. And I'm associated with my company, Union Corrugating Company, UCC Holdings. We also have acquired two other companies, Reeves Metals and Oakland Metals, who are fabulous organizations. So look me up on Indeed. On Indeed, listen at me. Look me up on LinkedIn, and I will be happy to connect. And I hope to meet some of you here in the very near future.
Awesome. As usual, it is a pleasure. I'm just so happy to see your face.
You as well. And Camille,
miss you. Yes, I won't let this happen again. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.